Have you ever tried to cook potatoes and they end up just stuck like a duck? Made hammer and chisel hash browns? Ouch. There are three main problems that cause potatoes to stick. In this video, we're going to go through the three problems and tell you how to fix them and get sliding non-stick potatoes. And this works in cast iron, carbon steel, and even stainless steel pans. The three problems are: one, your pan is probably not preheated correctly. Two, you're probably cooking them at the wrong temperature. And three, your potatoes were probably too wet when you added them to the skillet. Let's start with problem number 3 first, because it's the easiest to fix. Your potatoes are too wet. Now, when I grate up potatoes for hash browns, or I slice potatoes up for skillet potatoes, home fries, I will often put those in water. It draws out a little bit of the starch, and also it keeps the potatoes from turning brown while I get everything else ready. When you are ready to cook the potatoes, you don't want to add, as a general rule, very wet foods to hot oil. So you got to dry them really well. For the skillet potatoes, I drain them, I put them on kitchen towels, I lay them out, and I take either paper towels or more kitchen towels and get as much water off as possible. For the hash browns, a little bit more in depth here, obviously drain them, but I will put them in a towel and wring out as much moisture as possible and get those as dry as possible, and then they have a lower chance of sticking. Now, for the first and second problems, preheating the pan correctly and cooking at the correct temperature, that temperature is very important, because if you have your pan too hot, potatoes can stick. If you have it too cold, potatoes can stick. You need that kind of Goldilocks. This temperature is just right, kind of in the middle. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to know if your pan is too hot. You're going to get a wisp of smoke from your oil. You're going to put food in and it's just going to go crazy, obviously cooking too fast. Maybe you get a whiff of slightly burning food. That lets you know your pan is way too hot. It's a little bit more difficult knowing if your pan is hot enough. Let's use this thick, heavy cast iron pan on a gas burner here, and I'll show you what I do. This will go a little bit quicker in a stainless steel and a carbon steel, and you'll have to experiment a little bit depending on the thickness, the heaviness, the pan you're using, the type cooktop you have, etc., etc., etc. So let's use this as an example. This thick, heavy cast iron, it does not spread heat rapidly or evenly. So what I do for it is I heat it medium high for about 2 minutes, and then what I do is turn the burner off. And what that does is let that heat diffuse out through that thick, heavy cast iron and equalize. Now, how do you know if it's preheated evenly, and how do we know if the pan is at the right temperature? What I do here is take my preheated pan, hot pan, then I add room temperature cold oil. Hot pan, cold oil. And here I use a little trick of test potatoes. And what I do is go with a north, south, east, west, and maybe a hub of the spokes pattern with some potatoes. And what I'm looking for here is if they're sizzling, are they sizzling correctly? If they're just barely bubbling, the pan is too cold. If they're sizzling nicely, then the pan is just right. If they are smoking or you get a wisp of burning food, your pan is way too hot. But usually if you put the test potatoes in a minute or so after you add the oil, things go pretty well. I am also looking for evenness. So if they are sizzling on one side of the pan but not on the other, then I might get sticking on that colder side of the pan. What I do on the case of my gas stove is I just move the pan around on the burner. On electrics, or if you have a burner that kind of produces uneven heat, what you can do is just rotate the pan around, make sure everything is sizzling evenly, and then add your dried potatoes. And boom, non-stick potatoes. Now this works in stainless steel pans, carbon steel pans, and cast iron pans. A couple more real-world examples here. A fancy French Mauviel stainless steel pan. Potatoes absolutely stuck like a duck. A half hour later, same bag of potatoes, same stove top, preheated the pan correctly, got the potatoes dry, cooked them at the correct temperature, and non-stick. Same thing with cast iron pans. These were just stuck like a duck. Had to get the old hammer and chisel out These days you have to tell people that's actually a joke. I didn't actually use a hammer and chisel in my pan. We got those potatoes out of there, next batch, cooked them correctly, and they are sliding in non-stick. Now, wasn't it Lionel Richie who once sang, "Potatoes, I'm stuck on you"? Maybe a nice song for a romantic evening, but not so much when you're cooking dinner. If your potatoes are sticking, make sure you dry them. Preheat your pan correctly. Add your cold room temperature oil to your hot pan. Use test potatoes all around the pan. And if they're sizzling nicely, that tells you that the oil is at the right temperature. If some are sizzling and some are not, then you need to preheat your pan a little bit more evenly. Rotate that thing around until it's even. Then add your dried potatoes to the hot oil and boom, non-stick potatoes that slide around and still brown nicely. If you found this video helpful and hopefully enjoyable, here's some others you might like. Make sure you like and subscribe. Maybe click an affiliate sales link or two in the description below. Thank you for watching. See you again next time on Uncle Scott's Kitchen.